Okay, my friends, I did a little research on how do you convince people of something that they have been told is differently. And when they're being told differently by someone in authority, then they assume that what they have been told is correct and they reject whatever you confront them with because you are not an authority unless you can provide some authority figure. And the evidence is inconsequential as long as if you're not if you don't have the authority, if you can't show that you are an authority. Well, I'm going to show you I am an authority and I don't care anymore. I am an authority. I never want to brag about this, but I don't care anymore. I did all this stuff. I know how to calculate all this stuff out, and it all ends up with electricity, and that is what I'm talking about, and I understand it better than anybody that's breathing oxygen. I don't care. You can think of me as a bragger or whatever you want. But I'm done sitting back and letting everybody else make the rules. Thermochemistry. Everything you can get down, same thing here. It all ends up getting down to electricity. And I did this over and over and over and over and over and over. And I know how everything works and how it bonds, and I know how the molecules work and the atoms and the electrons, and I know more than they know. So if they want to come and talk to me about it, good for them, because I am far advanced to any physicist that's breathing oxygen right at this current moment. They all believed in the Bohr model. It's wrong. And my model is correct, which is electron flooding, which is this right here. And every particle is an electron, and there's a positive and a negative. Now, you're going to see these, and I have pictures of them. I have the experiments. I'm not guessing. They are the ones that are guessing. So there's my authority. You come to me if you want to be talking about your authority, because I got it. Okay, Roger Mudfossil University, I'm going to teach you how to do fusion in less than 5 minutes. Are you ready? Pulse red laser. Pulse red laser accelerating, approaching a Venturi, turning into plasma. Higgs bosons, as the Cherenkov radiation exhibits the boson phase, which is the charged particle carrier, creating the field surrounding it as it spins through space. This particle here is smaller than light because these are produced by light particles. This little bugger here is the actual photon, it appears. There is power and no power. Power and no power. Is it a torus? Is it a single dipole this way and an upside down dipole that way? Is it single particles? Well, let's take a look. And by the way, this is spinning particle to the right, drifting to the left, compressing as it goes. That means that light was accelerated. Now, let's go and see if we can finish this off quickly. Now, I am talking about fusion. And what is fusion? Fusion is where particles separate and then they come back together. Everybody thinks fusion means you just crush them together. No, it is not. Fusion means you bring them apart, and then when they come back together, they recombine in a lesser energy state, and then they give off a ton of electricity, which is, in my world, 1/5 of the particles you send in there. 1/5 of that is going to come out as electricity. And here it is right here. They're sending in the particles, zillions of them. They are forced through a Venturi. They crash into each other. That means they're going to crush each other and just shatter like glass. And what happens? The black ones, you see the little black ones? We saw it before. You saw the black and the white. Well, what's happened now? Here's the little black ones. You see them? White is all white, 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 white on white times white. What do we have here? There's a little black one, black one, black one, black one, brrr, blacks, brrr, blacks, black, black, blacks. They come back together. That means they're separated. Nobody can tell me they're not separated. Absolutely unquestionable. How and why, I have no clue, other than they're just smashing so hard into each other that they want to be apart. And for some reason, the blacks stay away from the whites and the whites come through. That's all I see. So what does that tell me we have to do to create fusion? Here it is right there. Am I going to make it in 5 minutes? I don't know. Oh, I'm going to hurry. I'm going to hurry. Cold, passive fusion. Yes, yes, yes. Laser, laser, laser. Brum, brum, brum. Through the Venturis. Ah, electrons coming out of your ears, all separated. They come back together into helium. H2 plus H3, deuterium, tritium equals helium plus 1838 approximately electrons. They are harvested through an electrode heat electricity. I'm done. Okay, here is the way that science goes totally wrong. They assume they're completely right still. Even though they're wrong, they still assume they're completely right. They just missed a little something here and there, which they missed everything, because a proton is not a big giant particle that weighs 1,800 times more than an electron. It is 1,800 electrons in a ball called a resonance stable proton, or 35, 37, right in that area. But it is not one gigantic proton. And that's what they still think. So now they all of a sudden say, well, there must be some new particles that we didn't know about. But we're still right. We know everything else is correct. Here goes.
On universality seems to be violated. Well,
let me just say what universality is. It means that there's only certain particles, they weigh only certain sizes, and that have to be this size in order to fit into the model. Well, guess what? All of a sudden they found another one, and another one, and another one. They say, whoa, we got all these particles. Yes, because they're just pieces of these falling apart, because there's 1,837 of them, or 1,835, and they can fall apart into little piece here, little piece there, or like a chunk like this. And that's what they're seeing. They're finding little chunks here and there. And they cannot explain them with the standard model. It absolutely doesn't work, and she agrees. And they all agree. That means we are back to square one, and my square is the correct square.
What that means is that there's something wrong with the standard model.
Yes.
We found the crack, finally, in our understanding of particle physics. There's absolutely no way that we can explain this observation with our current understanding. In fact, the only way we think we can explain what's going on is if there are new particles in the universe associated with new physics processes beyond those that we understand, and that these new particles are interfering with the beam mesons as they decay.
See, right there, that's just insanity. They think that everything's fine, but these particles that we just haven't found yet, they're just hanging around there causing problems. No, there's these particles that are falling apart. The model is wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong.
And suppressing the decay to muons compared to electrons. Now, if that turns out to be the case, that will truly be momentous.
Boy, you're not
Forget
kidding.
the Higgs. This will be the first sign of physics beyond the standard model, and it's what we've built the LHC to find out.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. They don't even know how gravity works. Can you imagine that? You ask us, oh, well, we don't know that. That's just too advanced. Well, guess what? The Earth sucks electrons. Anything with electrons in it, which means everything. The ones that have the least electrons is the things that only have electrons. That is light. That is static. That is electricity, right? Right to ground. Static, boop, right to ground. Lightning, boop, right to ground. The Earth sucks electrons because it's spinning in an electron soup, and it has a soup of electrons coating it. It creates a generator. I did this my whole life. I understand it intimately. And it ends up being, hold on, I had it somewhere. It ends up creating a, I can't, oh, here it is. It ends up creating a resistor, inductor, capacitor circuit. This is the output of electricity. It's all over here, and they are particles, tiny little particles. And that's the problem. Einstein destroyed everything. They destroyed everything back then when they had, oh, you got to have E equals MC squared, and then, oh, we got to throw a little constants in here and some kind of, stabilizers, and, they just nonsense to make nonsense work. Well, what it is we have emitting electrons. This is the resistance. This is the inductor because we're spinning in it, and it's creating a magnetic field, and then this is the capacitor. We're over capacity. We've accepted too many electrons. We are flooded, and it's a one-particle universe. Everything is made out of tiny particles we call electrons. Well, let's take a look at what they are. Okay, my friends, you know it's serious when the big whiteboard comes out. Now, some of this stuff isn't right. This goes back a couple of years ago. Now, but it's pretty close. And again, I think you saw that there was, at this point, I didn't know whether they were two different particles and up and down. You know, you see I have different colors here. Well, I've come to think that they're all individual particles, and they're all the same. There's a positive and a negative. So this would be the quiet state, and they seem to come into these boxes, like they polarize here and here. So that makes a nice little photon. And when they're moving, they seem to go into that photon. Now, you could get bigger chunks. You could get 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 of these. And that's what they're finding. We find 500 of these. We found 800 of those together. Well, that happens. They break apart and they fall apart like that. Because this is what the mass of every proton looks like. So you could break off a little chunk there, or a little chunk over here, or one, or two, or three, or four. And that's what light is. And I'm showing different frequencies. Now, I'm not sure, see the blue, the green, the red. Are these faster frequencies, or are they bigger particles? I don't know. I really don't know. I know they're different frequencies. I'm 100% sure of that. However, is that because they're different particles? And if they're different particles, we know they're hitting harder. We know this will do more damage than that. So, is it because it's spinning and it's the angular momentum, and all the speeds are the same? I don't know. I'm not sure about that at all. Anyway, and you could get down into the resonance frequency stabilized number of particles per proton, per neutron. Then it decays into all your isotopes and all the different little particle things that fall apart. And it accounts for everything. The Crookes radiometer and it's the dark matter too. You know, all these electrons coming from the sun. Here, look, all these electrons coming from the sun. They're just going nowhere. They're electrons. They're not nothing, and they just think there's nothing here. There's nothing here. Of course they're there. They're electrons just spitting out here, spinning towards the Earth. Some spin fast, some spin slow. Some are bigger, some are smaller. The moon re-radiates, and you cannot re-radiate the full spectrum that you receive. So they will always step down re-radiation from the sun. From the moon. The moon has a cold light, and you can only see certain colors in red and so forth. Well, this is something that is of interest to me. Is that blood only it looks black in moonlight. It doesn't look red. The moon doesn't have enough in it to bring out the redness of it. Anyway, it's just sort of a little interesting thing. Now, this is the sun, and that's 6,000 degrees. This is millions of degrees. We are 80 or 90 degrees here, and we are 56,000, where our outer atmosphere scrubs into all the particles that are here, and they scrub into all the particles that are here, and we spin into them. As we spin into them, the particles that are here are the same particles that are here, so they repel each other. It creates a magnetic field. It creates gravity, because you get south to north flow of electrons, and they suck them through the Earth, and they suck anything with electrons down. Everything that has electrons comes to Earth, except hydrogen, helium, because they don't have enough. They go up. Everything else comes to Earth. The more electrons, the harder they hit. Electricity, static, and lightning come at 100%, because there's nothing. They got to go through the air, so that's the resistance to them. But they're 100% electricity, right to the ground. So there you have it. Okay, so here's how the educators handle the situation where they are confronted by unimpeachable. See, now we're talking about impeachment at this point. But this is unimpeachable evidence I have presented, and it is ignored because it's unimpeachable. So how do they hide it? How do they stop this? Because it's so obvious, and I have so much evidence, DNA and CAT scans and specimens and all of the things that they accept. However, they won't accept it. So how do they do it? How do you hide truth? They use education against facts. And they're good at it. Oh, they are very good. They establish authorities, letters. They go after names and titles and all that business. They displays of knowledge, because I have a PhD in whatever it is. I am a whatever they are. They use confusing theories about, forget about it. They just jumble a bunch of words together, and then they say, well, obviously you don't understand it because it's too confusing for you because you're just not as smart as I am. So they do that, and then they create awards for themselves and the club members that'll all agree to say the same things, and that's what they have to do. Otherwise, they're not in the club anymore. And trust me, they're living in the street if they're lucky. They may have to find a bridge to live under. You know, Velikovsky, they destroyed him. Tesla destroyed everybody that talks about truth. But I don't care. Because you could destroy me. I don't care about it having anything. None of this stuff matters to me, any special awards or any of that business. That's all for people that are in the business. I'm not in the business. I want truth in my life. Now, so what do they do after that? They make standardized dogma. No dissenters. Do not talk against Einstein. Well, destroyed science for 100 years. I am against Einstein, and I have been extremely vocal, and they have agreed the Bohr model is wrong, not because of what I say, just that they realize it could be because of the experiments they did finally. But I'm telling you right now, if I wasn't screaming and people weren't screaming, they're never, ever, 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 ever gonna come out of the trench. They call it entrenched. So what do they do after that? They create all this stuff, and then they monetize it, and they put everybody into debt, the kids and everything, to control them. And then this a systematic destruction of facts so that they can maintain. It doesn't matter what the facts are, as long as you can suppress them and show that you had control of it, and you really are the ones that control the facts. Because it's going to happen now. They can't stop the mud fossils, but they will eventually own it because they are the ones that are much more intelligent than anybody else, and they're the only ones that can properly investigate. But they certainly had to take their time because it was very wasn't quite certain enough with all the DNA CAT scans and specimens and anatomists and chemistry and recreating the process and showing everything and having all of these people agree. It's going to take years to think it over, because they only engage with other educators who don't give a damn about you. What they care about is their BMWs and everything else, and being standing up in front of everybody and having the pretty girls with the short skirts up front. That's what they're looking for, and that's what they're getting. And if you speak about God in there, you might as well. Are you kidding me? Creation, somebody created like a guy in a big fluffy cloud. That's insanity. Let me tell you something. They have no idea about insanity, but they gonna learn. Okay, now's the time to confront Ken Wheeler, my buddy. Let's just call him Pete. He could have any name, but I'm just going to use the name Pete. Keeps attacking me, saying, yo, Ken Wheeler knows everything about it. He says there's no particles. I'll take on anybody. Well, I've tried to get a hold of Mr. Ken Wheeler, and I've never heard back, because I'm going to tell you right now, Mr. Ken Wheeler, they are particles. And I can show you. Now, I do know vibrations happen. Absolutely. They come from the little... and then they go into a certain mode where the electrons leave and flow away as light. I'm sorry, it's the case.